The night air shimmered with warmth and festivity, laughter spilling out into the open sky, as though joy itself had taken form and filled the reception hall. Fairy lights twinkled along the rafters, their golden glow casting a magical hue across the dance floor where couples swayed to the rhythm of a live band. The smell of roasted chicken, sweet pastries, and champagne hung heavy in the air, mingling with perfume and cologne. With the scent of flowers arranged carefully along each table, Emma stood near the back, her glass of sparkling water trembling faintly in her hand. She wasn't sure why she had come. The invitation had been kind, of course, a gesture from a college friend, whose circle she had long since drifted from. But Emma had said yes more out of politeness than excitement, and now she found herself surrounded by strangers and half-remembered acquaintances. She tugged lightly at the hem of her pale blue dress, suddenly self-conscious as laughter roared near the bar, and a group of old friends hugged as though no time had passed. She reminded herself to breathe, to smile, to blend in. It wasn't that Emma disliked weddings, in fact, she found them beautiful. It was that weddings reminded her of things she had lost, of dreams that once seemed close enough to touch, but had slipped away like smoke through her fingers. Still, she stayed. She listened to the music, let her gaze wander over the shimmering chandelier above the dance floor, watched the bride and groom twirl in the center of it all. For a moment, she even smiled. But fate often hides in shadows, waiting for the moment when a smile feels safest before it strikes. No one noticed when the first candle sputtered too close to the drape. The flicker was small, unremarkable, and drowned beneath the roar of voices and music. A whisper of smoke curled into the air, faint enough that it blended with the shadows on the wall. And then the fabric caught. The flame crawled quickly, hungrily, like a predator that had been starving. By the time someone gasped and pointed, it had already climbed halfway up the curtain, painting the hall in a sickly orange glow. The band faltered, instruments clashing awkwardly, and a scream pierced the celebration. In an instant, the music, the laughter, the joy, it all shattered. Panic surged like a wave, people rushing from their seats, chairs clattering to the floor. The smell of food was replaced by the acrid stench of burning fabric. Then wood. Then smoke so thick it coated the back of the throat. Emma's eyes widened in disbelief. For a second, she froze, unable to process what was happening. The fire spread along the drapery, licking at the walls with frightening speed. Someone shouted for water, another for help, but the heat only grew. Flames climbed higher, devouring everything in reach. Her instincts kicked in at last. She set down her glass and moved with the crowd toward the main doors, heart hammering. Bodies pressed against her, frantic, desperate, pushing her forward. She stumbled, nearly falling as a man shoved past her, his only thought survival. She didn't blame him. Every instinct screamed the same inside her. Run. Get out, Lev. But as the crowd funneled into the narrow exit, chaos multiplied. Someone tripped. Someone else shoved harder. Screams echoed against the crackling of fire. Emma's chest tightened. Her breaths, short and shallow as smoke, filled the hall. Then it happened. The hem of her dress snagged on the leg of a toppled chair. She tried to pull free, but the fabric held tight, trapping her like a cruel hand refusing to let go. Panic surged higher. She tugged harder, her voice breaking as she cried out for help. People rushed past, eyes wild with terror, too blinded by their own fear to notice her. She bent down, clawing at the fabric, but the smoke burned her eyes and blurred her vision. Heat pressed against her skin, the fire crawling closer with every second. Tears mixed with sweat as she coughed, her lungs screaming. She thought of her mother, her sister, the simple mornings she had taken for granted, the cup of tea she had left unfinished at home, the book still resting on her bedside table. It all flashed through her mind in sharp bursts, cruel reminders of the life she was about to lose. Is this it? The thought was deafening. Is this really how it ends? Her legs trembled as she slumped against the chair, the strength leaving her body. Flames danced across the wall, heat pressing closer, closer, as though the fire itself had her in its sights. The air turned suffocating, thick black smoke clawing into her lungs until she gagged. Her vision darkened at the edges. This was it. She was going to die here. And then, through the blur of smoke, she heard it. A voice. Strong, commanding, cutting through the chaos like a lifeline. Hold on! Don't move. Her head lifted weakly, disbelieving. A figure charged through the haze, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with a determination that made the fire seem powerless in his path. His shirt clung to his frame, streaked with soot, his face shadowed but fierce. He didn't hesitate. He didn't stop. He came straight for her, eyes locking onto hers as though she was the only person in the room. Emma tried to speak, but all that came was a cough. He was already there, crouching, his hands strong and sure as they gripped the tangled fabric. One sharp pull, then another, until the dress tore free with a ripping sound. Without pause, he scooped her into his arms, lifting her as though she weighed nothing at all. She buried her face against his chest instinctively, her body trembling against the steady thrum of his heartbeat. His arms wrapped tight around her, shielding her as he turned toward the exit. Flames licked at his back, smoke swirling. But he pushed forward with relentless force. Step by step, he carried her through the hell that had once been a celebration, past the choking haze, past the falling debris, and then fresh air, cold night air. It hit her lungs like a miracle, sharp and clean. She gasped, coughing violently as he lowered her gently onto the grass outside. The world around her was a blur of flashing lights, people sobbing, fire roaring behind them. But in that moment, all she saw was him. He crouched before her, his chest heaving, his face streaked with ash and sweat. His eyes, dark, steady, unshaken, met hers with a calm that wrapped around her like a blanket. "You're safe now," he said, his voice rough but certain. "I've got you." Emma clung to his words as much as she clung to the cool earth beneath her. Her heart pounded wildly, her body trembling uncontrollably. She wanted to thank him, to tell him he had just given her life back, but the words stuck in her throat, lost in the chaos of her gasps. Around them, sirens wailed, fire trucks roared onto the scene, and firefighters rushed toward the inferno. Guests huddled together, some wrapped in blankets, others crying into one another's shoulders. But Emma hardly noticed. The man stayed with her, one hand steady on her shoulder as though anchoring her to the world. He didn't leave, didn't look away, even as the flames consumed the hall behind them. He was her anchor in a night where everything else had collapsed into chaos, and it was only later, when the fire dimmed and the world quieted, that she would learn his name, Daniel, a single dad, a man who had been at the reception only because his daughter had begged him to take her to see the fireworks, planned for later. He hadn't planned to stay inside. He hadn't planned to save anyone. But fate, in its strange, merciless way, had placed him there. And Emma, who had thought her life would end in flames, would never again forget the man who carried her out of the fire.